Hello, this is Brittany Peterson. I received such great feedback from my original glute and core video that I wanted to do an extended version that goes over modifications, specifics on techniques, things like that to make sure that you are getting the best out of your workout. So I'm going to show you that list again. As far as the exercises that we are going to go over, but we're going to do less repetitions and we're going to do more explanation. So for the first one, you can also see my original video on just a brief aside about pelvic positioning to really enhance our focus on our core and make sure that we're getting that glute activation. Okay, so for bridges, doing our two legs together is pretty simple. The big thing is we want to make sure that it's coming from our backside. So we may need to stretch out our hip flexors beforehand. So you should really get a full squeeze at the top and feel a stretch at your end range where you're getting all the way up to the top because you are driving from your glutes. When it comes to single leg, it is easy to tilt or to drop. So that's where I use my hands as a guide as far as trying to match left and right at my wrist creases. Same thing here, I should make sure that I am getting full glute activation and trying to reach that top end range. Same thing with the other side. So with these ones, technique is huge. If you start losing glute, it is always okay to stop and start over again or to break it down in chunks. When I first started this, I would do 5 at a time, stop, reset, try to get 5 more, especially on my weaker leg. Some variations with this that you could do would be trying to stay up and then dipping. So maybe I'll change positions where I come up, I dip, I find the top. I dip, I find the top. So with those, you're still making sure that when you're fully up to the top, you're getting that full glute squeeze and you're getting full end range when you're rising up. So that's bridges. So fire hydrants next. So with fire hydrants, the big thing with that one, like we talked about in that intro video, is getting good core activation. So not sticking my butt out, tucking my core, finding my glute. So notice I can get huge range of motion, but I totally let go of glute, and now I'm just getting a back workout. So find that position, hold your core tight, find that pinch right back in your glute. Hold core tight and find glute each time. If you need to stop and reset, then do so, to make sure that you're not getting a ton of movement, you're holding core tight, which is helping you isolate glute. So find that core, I'm going to switch sides, find glute. Not a ton of variation on that one, but huge, important form. Okay, so Russian twist, that one, the main variation is feet off the ground, and adding a weight, welcome the dogs, adding a weight, or obviously losing a weight. So to make that one easier, you could have your feet on the ground. To make it harder, you could elevate your feet up more, engaging lower core more. And then obvious, you can modify with different weight additions. Clamshell. So big thing with this one on our side. So same thing, we want to make sure we have our TFL, our tensor fascia lata, on the front of our hip. We want to make sure we're getting the back side and actually engaging glute, not just hitting that front side of the hip. So making sure that if you are somewhat like leaned back, that's going to help you find your glute a little bit better. So you can modify this one as far as, laying on your side, no band, just focusing on finding glute. We can modify it by coming up, finding glute, and we can modify it. No, I wouldn't do that one. So that's where I would add on the band as far as modifying hip raised, adding various resistances. So green kind of being a middle ground. I have a black band that's a lot harder. I'm probably going to do less repetitions. So the big thing with this one is no matter what side you are doing, we're slightly, staying somewhat back where I can isolate glute better. Making sure I'm not getting too much of quad, making sure I'm not getting too much on the front of the hip, and we shouldn't be getting too much IT band either. We should really be finding this right back here. Okay, so hip extension. The big thing with this one, this is a really good starting one as far as helping you find your glutes. For me in the beginning, I really had a hard time activating glute in general. So starting out like this and just working on getting glute activation was really good. Making sure that it's symmetrical side to side. Laying down is a great position because everything else is stabilized. So then here, to make that harder, we add the band. And I can get a little bit more resistance. Making sure that that's still symmetrical side to side. So from there, we can also do this in standing. So first, we can do it standing supported, where I'm still kicking back, I'm holding core tight, I'm isolating and I'm finding my glute. I can add a band, which I think a little bit of resistance is easier to actually make sure you've found glute. But then the next step would be is holding core tight and doing this standing unsupported, which is going to replicate running more. So we think about my planted leg. That glute needs to be turned on. I want to make sure that I'm not bowing my knee in, and I'm extending that other leg out. So this leg is still working, core is still working, while I am extending that leg and finding glute. Same thing with the other side. Tuck core, make sure this leg is turned on, pay attention to my knee, extend that other opposite side back. Keep core turned on, stabilizing leg turned on. This is a greater challenge, more dynamic, replicates running a little bit better. The hip abduction, the trio, the hip abduction, bug stomps, and then internal and external rotation of the hip. So with that one, the idea is to do them, all three of those consecutively on one side, and then switch to the other side. There's a lot of different ways of making this one easier or making it harder. As far as hip extension, the first thing here, kind of like what we talked about with the other exercise, is making sure that we're slightly back, and then I actually bring this top leg back behind me a little bit so that I can extend up in hip abduction, and I'm still, again, making sure that glute is doing all the work, not the front side of my hip. So bringing that leg just a little bit behind the bottom leg to really help me isolate glute. That's the big one for technique on this one. So obviously I can make this one a lot harder by going into side plank, where I'm going to keep this bottom glute turned on while I'm still trying to find top glute. So make sure, you know, if I'm increasing the challenge like this, I would certainly do fewer repetitions, give myself a break so that I'm not torquing this bottom knee, or I'm not starting to compensate in other places like my back. So same thing with the bug stomps. You know, I'm trying to stay parallel to the floor, and then I'm driving my heel back as if I am squishing a bug underneath my foot or underneath my heel. So with this one, that heel is the important part, because that final movement helps you get that squeeze in the glute. And then going into the final internal external rotation, paying attention to the knee on this one, making sure my knee is rotating up, my knee is rotating down. Same thing with the, if you're in the full plank on that one, make sure that bottom glute is turned on, otherwise we're going to start feeling too much at the knee. So really that's the technique for those three, with the goal of doing them consecutively. And then the next way to make that one harder, I don't have them, but if you have ankle weights or something like that, you can add a lot of weight and really feel the burn in the hips. Okay, plank side twist. So with this one, really we're getting just another aspect of core. So in the video, I did this. You know, so to make that easier, I can drop down to my knee and really feel the core. To make it harder, I can add my kettlebell back in here. So get a little bit of upper extremity workout too. The big thing with this, if I add weight, make sure that core is turned on. You don't want to start just having this fling down and now I've tweaked my back. So core is turned on, bottom hip is turned on. You're feeling that squeeze with your adductors to gain trunk stability while we're adding a more difficult component. Okay, V-ups. With this one, there's a few different ways of making this easier or harder. It's just a little bit more challenge on core. You know, so we can do modified V-up, where I'm bending my knees. We can do more of a standard V-up. And then we can make it harder with the kettlebell. So again, slow and controlled. So with that one, I'm really making sure that I am engaging my core and using my core to propel myself up. Not just hoisting myself up with my arms, or not just hoisting myself up using my back. Okay, so the next one, I have the Bosu ball. So some of you don't have Bosu balls, and that's totally fine. They're a great addition on making things harder. The ones that I showed us both can be done without the Bosu ball. So as far as squats goes, you know, I can do those standing. Where here I am paying attention to, it's really kind of great doing this with the camera, because I can see if I'm tilted to one side or the other, or where my knees tend to go. Because you want to make sure that you're sitting back as if you were in a chair, but you want to keep that symmetrical between your knees and make sure your hips are level. We should be feeling this. Yes, obviously we're going to feel it in our quads, but as we're sitting back, we should feel that on our backside, really squeezing our glutes as we come up. Resetting with our core, Sitting back, watching our knees, making sure we're sitting back and we're feeling that squeeze in our backside. So that's easier to do with both legs. But now when we start looking at one leg, that's where we can start really seeing hip dropping. You know, so I could compensate by letting that hip drop. So I need to turn my glute on more because I'm trying to, you can see that my left side is my harder side, where I'm trying to keep that knee out, not letting it bow in like that, and then trying to keep this level. So my glute really needs to be turned on, really needs to be strong to do single leg squats correctly. So keeping that knee turned out, hips level, coming back up. So you can see that this is not one that we just are gonna rush through. So really doing a few, you know, again, when I first started, I did 5, and that was usually a pretty good workout. And then I would take a break or switch to the other side. So with this one, another thing is I am barefoot. So you can see I have some ankle issues where that might be a potential video down the road. But this is also really good working on the stability in my foot as that progresses up the chain. So yes, I'm still getting glute, making sure my glute is turned on, but I'm also really making sure, or I'm getting some good workout in my feet too. So if you have more troubles with your feet, you could, a way to make that easier would be to do that with shoes on. And then obviously a way to make that harder is to increase your repetitions, add a more dynamic challenge like the Bosu ball. So doing it on this side is actually a little bit easier compared to flipping it over. So just a little sneak peek, sorry Sooks, is I struggle a lot more if I were to do that here. So that could be something, you know, to work up to, is trying to do your single leg squat on this side of the Bosu ball. You know, or we can just add greater variability if we had, you know, one of those soft pads or something that we could stand on to add more of a dynamic surface to be standing on. That's going to challenge us more at our foot. But then we really need to make sure that our glutes are actually turned on and super strong, and then holding that tight in our core. Because with our squats, we can do those wrong really easily, and then we're just not getting the benefit out of it. Let me think about another thing. I don't have it set up here, but something I might need to look into is if you can set up almost like a sling to be able to hook your arms and then go into your squat or your single leg squat. So if you had something kind of hanging from the ceiling, where you can have some upper body support, that can help you as you're working on your form, you know, more of a deep squat, single leg, things like that. So having a little bit of support. The other thing, I just lost my train of thought on that. Yeah, all right, so that's squats. Okay, so the plank alternating limbs. So this is another good one as far as core turn. I mean, it's another reciprocal movement, which we think about running is very reciprocal. As I'm driving with my left glute, you know, I need to stabilize with my opposite quadrant in my core. So that's what this exercise is really designed to do. So you can do this on the Bosu ball. So flipped on this side down here. But a nice starting point, there's a lot of ways on land to make this easier or harder. You know, so easier staying right here, but I'm still gonna find that good tucked position. I'm gonna turn on my glutes. I initiate reaching and then I stabilize. I don't have enough space. So I initiate reaching, turn on, find glute as I stretch out. Then come back. So find that position, hold my core tight, initiate reaching, find glute, drive back. So again, slow motion, because if I just do this, see how much trunk movement I have? I'm not holding core tight and I'm not finding glutes, so I'm kind of wasting my time. So find that position, tense up your glutes, initiate reaching, find that opposite glute, squeeze and kick back. And you can even hold that. You could add pulses, coming back in. Same thing, starting position, find glute, initiate the arm, turn that glute on, drive all the way back. We could add some pulses. And come back in. I can change this, still with no equipment, I can change this into a plank versus quadruped. I can make it harder by coming into a plank. So same thing though, find core, tense core, initiate reaching, find glute, it's a little bit harder, come back in. The idea is to try to minimize how much shifting side to side you have. So find core, tighten, initiate reaching, opposite leg, find glute, hold, and come back. Find core, so tighten core back up if you lost it, initiate reaching, find that glute, add a couple pulses, come back in. Tighten core, initiate reaching, other leg, add a couple pulses. So that is still pretty darn challenging. And then this is just another modification of adding an unstable dynamic support system here. So some easier aspects of it and some harder aspects of it. So finding here, holding core tight, reaching out, kicking leg up, add some pulses if you wanted, get our starting position, reach arm, kick back leg. You can see how that's harder because I have less stability under my arms. But the biggest thing is you want to make sure that that doesn't turn into an arm and back. Hold your core, keep your core activated, keep your core really strong. Okay, so now I had us go on to the therapy ball. So crunches. Obviously, we can do a lot of variations with crunches where we can do those with no equipment. The big thing here is just making sure whatever form I use, I'm a tactile person, so I want to feel that the correct muscles are doing the work. So same thing with glutes. You can feel if you're actually getting a contraction in the right place by feeling those muscles contract and making sure you're giving your body that added input to turn on the correct muscle. So with crunches, our standard crunches, our side crunches, I could add different positions with my arms. I could throw the kettlebell in. I could do full crunches, slow and controlled. So I'm not just using my arms and throwing myself up. I want to make sure I'm engaging core, coming all the way up. And as I come down, I'm rounding out my back. I'm trying to hold my core tight and go down one vertebrae at a time. So you can just add that. One thing with the therapy ball, the dogs are super active today. One thing with the therapy ball is that I can target a little bit of back extension by being able to drop below and come up. So that is one benefit where I get a little bit extra back extension. I hold core tight and I come up. So that works on your upper core while a lot of other things are engaging lower core. Which is why I tend to like using the therapy ball for crunches. All right, so the ball rotations was next with the therapy ball. This one is kind of hard, obviously hard to do without the ball, you know, as far as being able to do more dynamic plank work. But there would be ways of making this easier as far as doing this from our knees. Again, the big thing with this one is I'm not sticking my butt out and I'm holding my core tight. So again, if I find that with the ball, if I'm arching my back, I've lost my core, I'm too tired, cut down your repetitions. This is a much more advanced exercise where if we are not strong enough to do full 20 repetitions, we're going to compensate and we're going to end up with potentially more soreness or more harm really than the strength we're trying to actually build. So that's where there's totally no shame in doing this from our knees or doing this from here, but I'm going to do, you know, maybe mini circles, and then I start with bigger, or, you know, I progress to bigger circles, or I go straight out, straight back in, straight out, straight back in, or I go to the side, I go to the other side. There's a lot of different things I can do, but the big thing is if I start, you know, dropping my back, or if I start hunching my back, you know, or I'm crumbling here, it shows that I'm doing too much too soon. So back off with less repetitions or drop it back a little bit by starting out on that full plank and then progressing to your knees or vice versa, to build up your strength with correct form. And then the last one I put on here is mountain climbers. So there's a lot of different ways to do mountain climbers. I could do this here, where again, I'm not just flinging my legs around, I'm thinking about tuck my core, squeeze, squeeze core, squeeze core, squeeze core. I could add variation by going opposite knee to opposite elbow, squeeze core, squeeze core, squeeze core. I can do this in a plank position, same knee to same elbow, or opposite knee to opposite elbow, getting a little bit of a twist in there. I can add additional ways of making this harder. So I can bring the Bosu ball back out. So less stable surface on my arms, more demand on holding my core tight. Same variations of knee to elbow and opposite knee to opposite elbow. Being mindful that I'm not doing this, I'm not doing this, holding core tight, taking a break if I need to. You can make it even harder on the therapy ball. Same principles apply. Greater demand with a more dynamic support underneath us. Okay, and then I throw in push-ups at the end, and we know many different ways: knee push-ups, you know, diamond push-ups, triceps push-ups. We could change that up to really make sure we're getting a whole variety and adding that upper body strength in there. All right, thank you again for tuning in, and hope this helps as far as fine-tuning this workout to really what you need, and then giving you some options on how to either scale it back for a good starting point and then build and progress on from there. Thank you.